Welcome, everybody, to the Building for Digital Equity Show. We're so excited that you're joining us to kickstart Digital Inclusion Week. Today, we're going to be diving into the heart of coalition building. We'll explore the magic that comes from meaningful collaboration and harnessing the resources that exist in our communities. And most importantly, you'll learn how to build a coalition that lasts. Here's what you can expect for the next 75 minutes. First, we'll share what Digital Inclusion Week is all about and how you can get involved. Then we'll jump into the popular lightning round segments. You'll learn from the Indigenous Digital Inclusion Working Group, Franklin County Digital Equity Coalition, and Community Tech New York as they share how they're leveraging strong partnerships to make a lasting impact. Afterwards, we have Sam Musgrave, the Interim Executive Director for the Baltimore Digital Equity Coalition, and previously a director with Project Waves, who will share how they're closing the digital divide in Baltimore. And to finish this awesome lineup, we're excited to have our keynote speaker, Georgia Savage, the Deputy Director for Oakland Undivided. From finding the right partners to breaking down barriers to participation, Georgia will share strategies from Oakland Undivided on building a sustainable coalition. Building for Digital Equity is an educational series of live stream events and a podcast to inform and debate digital inclusion efforts. And today's event is hosted by the awesome Institute for Local Self-Reliance and National Digital Inclusion Alliance. And the Building for Digital Equity event live streams are sponsored by Utopia Fiber, the largest open access fiber network in the nation. I'm happy to be co-hosting yet again for the third show this year of Building for Digital Equity. I am Pamela Rosales, she, they, and I'm the Training and Community Engagement Manager with the National Digital Inclusion Alliance, NDIA for short. NDIA advances digital equity by supporting community programs and equipping policymakers to act. We advocate for broadband access, tech devices, digital skills training, and tech support. And officially, NDA has reached over 1,900 affiliates, so we're almost at that 2,000 mark. Very excited about that. And we're also including 41 tribal entities and organizations in all 50 states, including the District of Columbia, American Samoa, Northern Mariana Islands, Guam, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. I'll be your co-MC for today, along with Chris Mitchell.
Hello, and thank you. Pamela, always a wonderful intro, bringing that great energy. I'm Christopher Mitchell, the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, where I direct the Community Broadband Networks Initiative. Pronouns that I use include he and him. And we are always interested in your feedback. So would love it if you have chats. We'll actually be prompting you along the way to throw some items in the chat. Questions could go in the chat. The best way to watch is on YouTube, and you should have received links for that. We do stream to other areas to make it more convenient, but YouTube is where the chat can be the most vibrant, where you make sure that we see them and all that. I'm very excited for this show about coalitions, not just because I'm always excited by the show and the wonderful guests that come together, but because coalitions are how we do things. There's a lot of work to be done out there, and no one person or organization can handle such a high load. And so we really need to learn how to work together, how to respect others who might come at it from a different angle, and how to actually make change that way. So there's a lot of lessons that have been learned along the way. And so it's going to be a particularly fun episode. As we talk about that, people should put questions in the chat, even if it's not directly related, and we'll see how our chat monitors are at answering hard questions. So feel free to challenge them. Wanted to note that some recent work that we did an episode of Connect This, which is another video show that we do. You can find it at connectthisshow.com. And last week, we discussed how to build networks to make sure low-income families are well-connected. It's something we've talked about from time to time, often from a kind of a different perspective than you might normally get, looking at from internet service providers, how they might do it, how to work with building owners. And it's a perspective that I think is pretty valuable that folks that are doing this work from a nonprofit side don't always get to hear. So One other self-promotion, and then I'll stop because it just makes me feel really skeevy. And that is the Community Broadband Bits podcast, my baby. I've been doing it for 13 years now, I think. Episode 603. It's not at the top if you subscribe to the show, but it's toward there with Mike Romano representing the rural companies that provide internet service. Some of them are cooperatives, some of them are locally rooted for-profit ones. And that episode is where we talk about the Affordable Connectivity Program and reforming USF, the Universal Service Fund, themes that I think are very relevant for this audience. That's something that we'll continue to talk about, I think, because it's not going to happen in the very near future. We need a long-term strategy with coalitions to make sure that that all gets done. Finally, well, maybe not entirely finally, but I wanted to make sure I note that if you want closed captioning, that is best on LinkedIn, as best as we can tell. We'd love to have it everywhere. Right now, our understanding is it's working best on the LinkedIn stream. So if that's what you would like, you can grab it there. You can submit your questions and chat on YouTube's chat function. But if you need to email someone, if that's not working for you, Christine@ilsr.org will do the best she can to try to sort you out. It's Christine@ilsr.org. And I'm just realizing it's with a CH, not a K. So if that helps you to spell it correctly. But now let me throw it back over to you, Pamela.
Thank you so much, Chris. Awesome. So we're going to first start off with Digital Inclusion Week. It is Digital Inclusion Week, officially starting today, October 7th, through the entire week till 11. Digital Inclusion Week is an annual week of awareness, recognition, and celebration of the digital inclusion efforts we've made in our communities throughout the year. During this week, organizations and individuals across the country, and also some international friends, host special events and campaigns to promote and increase digital equity in their communities. So you'll see organizations share community stories. A lot of storytelling will be happening on the impact of their digital inclusion programs. You'll see government buildings, city hall, or bridge light up in teal in support of digital inclusion. Conferences, summits, and workshops and community events happen a lot throughout the week. And organizations will often share a launching of a new program, or a city will share their proclamation for Digital Inclusion Week. It's a really fun time. And the theme this year is Stronger Together, Mobilizing Towards Sustainability, which co-aligns with today's theme of Coalition Building for Success, because as Chris mentioned, coalitions are truly such a crucial part in the digital ecosystem, and that's how we keep our work moving forward.
Before you share some of the highlights coming this week, I did just want to note that for people to make sure that you don't lose the sight of this, one of the reasons that we want to have a week to highlight these kinds of things is because there are really good people out there who are working on different issues and organizations. They have limited time and budget. This is an opportunity, I think, to really focus on helping them to better understand how we can get things done here and make a difference. There's issues that I feel like that people are working on that are critical, right? Housing, education, things like that. Digital equity is one in which I feel like we can make a really big difference in the short term with some sustained work. And this week is an opportunity to showcase that and help people make sure that they're not forgetting about it or sidelining it when they could be involved with it, even if it's not their top priority. So those are the sorts of things that we want to get out of this week too.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Chris. And make sure that people know that your event exists. If you're hosting a Digital Inclusion Week event, make sure to share it on social media by using the hashtag DIW2024, also hashtag Digital Equity Now. And if you are hosting an event, we want to make sure that we spotlight it on our website. We have an interactive map that lists all of the in-person events. So go ahead and register your event by going on our Digital Inclusion Week 2024 webpage. And for NDIA, we've got this event starting off Digital Inclusion Week, and we also have a Digital Inclusion Week 101 webinar this Wednesday. And recently we launched our new program manual. So we have a webinar on exactly kind of walking through what that program manual entails and how to use it. That will be this Thursday, October 10 at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. All right. So first up, we have our first trivia question. I know that's a popular segment. So here's the question. In spring of 2022, NDIA conducted a coalition survey to gather information on digital inclusion coalitions across the country. According to the survey results, what year were most of these coalitions established? So go ahead and type your answer in the chat of what year you think the majority of the digital inclusion coalitions who filled out the survey when they founded.
Do you ever play those bar trivia games where it gives you like 5 answers and it starts taking them away? Well, right now, 1999 just disappeared. So that's not an option anymore.
2023 just, well, no.
Disappeared.
There are some that actually just formed 2023, but 1999 disappeared.
Yeah. All right. So what are we looking at?
Yeah. So the answer is 2020. Awesome. I see some folks got that in the chat. Perfect. So while the most established coalitions had been around for roughly 10 years, the majority actually started since the beginning of 2020, which is many in response to the COVID-19 social distancing requirements. So go ahead, Chris.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say that as the answers are rolling in, it's interesting. There's a number of people that are, saying a little bit earlier, and I think that's a good sign. Those are people who were recognizing this was an issue a little bit earlier than others, perhaps. 2020 was also a year in which there was more philanthropy available, and so I think for those who might have not had the resources to try to start it or not been able to start it, they may have found that there was a more fertile environment in 2020 because of the pandemic, as you noted.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you for that. And we saw, a lot of folks take opportunity of what happened in 2020 as well. And so, like I said, that survey, it was launched in 2020 or 2022, and a total of 51 coalitions submitted information. But it's been 2 years now, and we know a lot has changed since then. We know a lot more coalitions have formed since then. Maybe some of you are part of a coalition that has formed, after 2020. And so we want to hear from you. We are conducting a new coalition survey to better understand and support coalitions and how they look like now. So we're asking all digital inclusion coalitions, please designate somebody, a representative, to complete the coalition survey. Please complete that survey by November 15. And what we're going to do is we're going to publish the summary of our survey findings on our coalition webpage, along with a new directory and an interactive map of coalitions so that folks can find your coalition if they are new to the work or just want to join. So please fill out our coalition survey to get on that map. Perfect. So let's move to our next popular segment, crowd favorite, the lightning rounds. The lightning round spotlights unique digital inclusion initiatives, and we're really excited to be featuring 3 speakers who will share how they're leveraging strong partnerships to make a lasting impact. So first up, we have Davida Damar, the Digital Inclusion Manager with Ameren Critical Infrastructure and awesome colleague. Davida, welcome to the show. Please tell us more about the Indigenous Digital Inclusion Working Group that you've been working on.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. Happy Digital Inclusion Week. My name is Davida Delmar. I'm a citizen of the Navajo Nation, Ya'ateh. I'm based in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm here to share about the Indigenous Digital Inclusion Working Group. I serve as the Digital Inclusion Manager for Ameren, a tribally owned and operated company. Our efforts in the Critical Infrastructure Division are to assist tribal nations to develop and deploy the most important 21st century critical infrastructure, high-speed broadband internet. Ameren is a close partner with NDIA, where we have worked together to amplify digital inclusion efforts in Indian country. NDIA provides amazing support and resources to their network of practitioners, with 41 of their affiliates identified as tribal entities. So through our partnership, we support 18 full-time digital navigators in rural and tribal communities. 7 of those 18 are tribal entities. So from this program, the National Digital Navigator Corps, or NDNC, we started to develop direct support for digital inclusion practitioners in Indigenous communities beyond this program. So our understanding of digital inclusion in Indigenous communities also stems from our participation in the Tribal Broadband Bootcamp. This is a unique and special event that is hosted by tribal communities and organized by folks at ILSR, including our host, Chris Mitchell, and Matthew Rantanen's organization, Waskawiwan. Participants learn about wireless and fiber networks by learning from experts, which oftentimes are the participants themselves. Digital inclusion is an ongoing theme at the boot camps and enables me to visit folks who are building broadband networks on tribal land and learn and experience and engage with their community, which is very important when you're partnering with Native folks. So since we had a base network of 7 tribal entities with NDNC and our work with the boot camps, we found that there was a need for Native folks to talk to each other and break out of the silos that they found themselves in. I would meet a person who was single-handedly working for their tribal community on broadband deployment efforts and digital equity efforts, both aspects being an important part of their role and sustainability of their work. Many tribes are limited to one or a few to do the necessary work to understand the current state of digital equity and plan for sustainable solutions. They are tasked with such things as researching funding opportunities, vetting vendors, hiring new staff, building support from leadership, communicating with their state, and conducting asset mapping for their communities. The Indigenous Digital Inclusion Working Group attempts to fill a need that enables folks to talk to each other and create a dialogue around what it means to do digital inclusion work and define it for our Indigenous communities. We developed a mission and vision for statement that helped to guide our work, which can be quite a task if you're hoping to serve all Indigenous communities, including those from the lower 48 states, Alaska Native, Native Hawaiian, and some international communities. In our discussions, we have gained insight on a lot of different issues, including the realities of the tribal benefit under the Affordable Connectivity Program, or ACP, the importance of digital sovereignty, and provided insight and preparation for current digital equity funding for Native entities. A network of organizations are doing similar work to support and participate in digital equity efforts, including policy, research, data, and advocacy, many of whom are active participants in our working group. So NDIA and Ameren have had the added benefit of ensuring that Indigenous groups get the support and representation they need to talk to national leaders and highlight critical issues, including at the most recent net inclusion. We've been able to call on a few of our members to build programs and events meant to highlight and celebrate digital inclusion in tribal communities, such as the 7-Star Communities Program, which is open to Native entities right now, and the application is due October 11th, and the upcoming Net Inclusion Conference that's going to be hosted on the Gila River Indian community on their tribal lands. So thank you for this opportunity to speak. And if you're interested in joining the Indigenous Digital Inclusion Working Group, both Native and non-Native folks are welcome to join who are serving tribal communities. We meet the first Wednesday of every month, and you can email me directly at ddelmar@emeren.com to join. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Davida. It's wonderful to see you sharing that. And, as someone who's got to work with you at the tribal broadband boot camps, I just wanted to thank you for everything that you bring there, the way in which you are so passionate about this, and you've helped to bring people together to share so many lessons. Watching so many different hundreds of different tribes scattered around, many of whom haven't had a chance to really be a part of these sorts of things, to share ideas with others. It's been really special to see what one person could do, when you're bringing all these people together to share these ideas and things like that. So it's just been really special to see that, and I'm excited to see it continue.
Absolutely. I think all the folks we work with are champions, which is not an easy task. So,
yeah, they're definitely under-resourced, and I think it's time. It's a special time, or it's a particularly good time to recognize the special special accomplishments that people have made as we've gotten to know them individually. So I just wanted to highlight that out. Like, it's one of those things where everyone working on digital equity is under-resourced, right? Well, like, some people have more higher hills to climb than others, and it's really great watching that get going and see what's possible. So thank you.
thanks.
Thank you so much, Davida, for all your work and for leading that. And thank you so much for all the Indigenous Digital Inclusion Working Group members. All right. Our next lightning round speaker is Jordan Davis, Executive Director with Smart Columbus and part of the Franklin County Digital Equity Coalition. Jordan, it's great to have you here. Can you please tell us more about Franklin County Digital Equity Coalition?
Would love to. Thank you so much for convening this and for kicking off Digital Inclusion Week in such an inclusive and nationwide way. It's awesome to hear all these great examples. As Pamela shared, my name is Jordan Davis. I'm the Executive Director of Smart Columbus, and I'm based in Columbus, Ohio, which is the capital of our state, and Franklin County, which is the largest county in the state. And we are par for the course, given the average date of launch of our coalition. Our coalition was formed and the response to the pandemic in March of 2020. It started with our community foundation, our regional planning commission, and our library coming together to start to bring partners to connect dots on emergency response. How do we close the gap in enabling families, particularly to learn online virtually? That led to a continuous widening of the table. Over the past 4 years, we have extended the table to all types of organizations within our county. It was a critical center of gravity for connecting dots on who was doing what during the pandemic, which then led to a self-introspection activity of our community. We took on a lot of new projects and programs. Who was right to do those? What was working? What wasn't working? Let's lay that out to form a plan of how we move forward in recovery. So I just want to highlight some of the community response that was coordinated by the Franklin County Digital Equity Coalition. A big piece was distributing devices. So 50,000 community computing devices were distributed. We helped with CARES Act dollars get the city of Columbus to fund the gap of devices in the Columbus City schools so we could go one-to-one. You'll see hotspots were a major initiative. We also deployed other affordable Wi-Fi solutions in some pilots. And we strongly promoted the Affordable Connectivity Program, at the time EBB. And all of that led to a series of planning efforts that we did as a collective action coalition. And what we produced in 2022 has really been the roadmap and kind of the gap between what was that crisis response in 2020, 2021 to where do we go long term. We call this our Digital Equity Action Agenda. This was our next step in maturing our work together. And this action agenda put forth 5 kind of big idea priorities and a funding proposal that went to the city and county, which now has ultimately been funded at about $20 million between the city and county. And we are now at the stage of finalizing an implementation plan that we will begin implementing as soon as this month. These are some of the bigger ideas and recommendations that are part of this. Connectivity is our moonshot idea, and will need to be funded by a different pot of funds, but it's something that we are committed to bringing fiber to every home in Franklin County, but particularly into our low-income neighborhoods. But our other, the following 5 will be funded by that local investment. So more specifically, we have a gap in our ecosystem related to devices. So we're closing that with a skills program that's really focused on essential skill building, and then outreach and adoption and trust building for that. These are the members of our Franklin County Digital Equity Coalition. You'll see that our internet service providers are not members of the Franklin County instance. We engage them in a subgroup where we give them quarterly updates, but in our coalition is predominantly government, education, and social service organizations. And then I just wanted to close by connecting another dot in our region. Our state has formed regional coalitions. We also manage what's called the Central Ohio Regional Digital Inclusion Alliance, and that's an 11-county footprint in Central Ohio. And we have representatives from every county in that program, and it's really a response to the state's broadband office.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jordan, for sharing that great work that you're all doing in there. And perfect. We are going to introduce.
Hold on. I just want to also briefly say that Jordan, it's a very impressive. It's one of the larger coalitions I think that is out there, and all the more so with the pressure of I think almost the entire world rooting against Ohio State. So, it's a hard work out there. So, appreciate it.
Come out winning in the end. It's okay.
Appreciate all the work y'all do.
Thanks all. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan. And our final lightning round speaker is Monique Tate. Monique is the director at Community Tech New York. Thank you for joining us, Monique. And please tell us more about community-owned internet trust.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for the invitation. And again, happy Digital Inclusion Week to everyone. I have to give a shout out to my wonderful and amazing team because Community Tech New York has been in existence since 2019. However, we've been working in the digital justice and digital equity space since 2011, 2012. Our team is small but mighty. We have, of course, my co-director, Raul Enriquez, our deputy director, Danny Peralta, Erica Kermani, Tiffany Laujoa, and Tara. We have a wonderful time together, but what we focus on is making sure that the community is at the center of creating digital equity solutions. One of the, I'm approaching this just a little bit different in talking about coalitions, although I'm going to start with talking about it. I'm talking about what comes out of these partnerships and how coming together allows us to be able to be the most successful that we can be. At CTNY, we believe that building community internet access and tech training builds community power. And that's what we want to do. We want to build and create community power. Next slide, please. This timeline helps to show a little bit about how our progression has been going. And you see, we have one of the oldest dates out there. I believe we are the first community digital justice coalition that was ever to exist. And that was started in 2009. But talking about coalition building, that was built by a group of partners from all different dynamics and areas of work. There were artists, there were community residents, there were advocates, there were lawyers, there was a great mixture of those who are involved in the community. And that's the key word. So we recognized at that time that there was digital disparity. There was not equitable access. In Detroit, we had 60% of the residents that did not have internet connection. And even still today, we're working to convince people about why they need to become a part of this digital ecosphere, as opposed to being afraid of it. Especially people are concerned about scams, but we help to demystify the tech to everyone through our tool of community technology, where we break it down, make it easy to understand and digest. Now, what you'll see in this timeline is a very interesting thing that happens is that it seems that each iteration of our work, as you see these years progress, they are associated, unfortunately, with some type of a disaster or response to it. Even in 2009, that was the financial crisis, and we evolved as a coalition to work towards equitable access to internet, devices, and digital literacy for the Detroit community. In 2012, we introduced the Digital Stewardship Program, and this was extremely successful throughout various parts of the country. We've been walking lockstep with our partner, the Detroit Digital Justice Coalition, not only the Detroit Digital Justice Coalition, but Detroit Community Technology Project. So as things were going on in New York, so the same was going on in Detroit. New York had the both experience and pleasure and probably fear of really evolving during the time of Hurricane Sandy, because the community network that was built by those digital stewards was the only lasting thing after Hurricane Sandy had struck. It was the only communications tool. Even FEMA had to get onto that tool. So it that Red Hook community was very powerful in helping the message to be delivered that community networks can be very powerful and very useful, and especially in joining and bringing together community members and people. In 2016, that was the next project that was introduced, and that was relevant to community network building. So Resilient Communities and the Rise New York City project, there were 5 entities that evolved and built very strong and powerful networks, but community networks aren't the easiest thing to manage. And we still have 2 of the 5 that are still strong, very strong today. The others do exist. Similarly, in Detroit, we had 3 very strong community networks, and I was the manager of the largest community network that is still running today, and they are still growing. The underneath that 2016, you see a picture of what we refer to as our portable network kit. The portable network kit is very instrumental in what we do because it is portable and it is a network and a tool for teaching individuals about how the internet works, how the connectivity of internet can be shared amongst one another. So it's basically a wireless network system carried around in a suitcase. And alongside it, you see a smaller one that looks like a briefcase. It's the teaching PNK so that we can go into communities and teach people about how to have their own technology. In 2022, a partner that we're working with right now is El Puente in Williamsburg. And we also have a very strong partner that we work with in the Bronx called The Point. Those entities, that's what we are calling working in coalition together with now, not just the Digital Justice Coalition, but literally doing effective things with partners. You can go to the next slide, please. And some of those effective things that we started, what we say that we want to do when we work with various organizations, we want to help them bring tech into their atmosphere. Literally, we say, we feel that success is achieved when they have added a tab to their website that refers to technology or a project, so to speak, in the same line. El Puente has been excellent in doing that. They were, and this coalition and how it works, they were introduced to us by The Point in the Bronx, who was working with us back in the 2016 era. They have this picture that you see is a picture of them doing a needs survey, and because community is at the center. It's nothing to respond to if the community doesn't tell you what it is that they want or need. So this is a discotheque, and during this discotheque, we were showing devices and how the portable network kit works, how cabling works, but also making sure that we got the community input and did a needs assessment. You can go to the next slide, please. Now, this is something that we are super proud of, that how it went full cycle and evolved, the going from just talking to El Puente about considering tech and how powerful it will be in your organizing work. And we went to build a community tech lab. You see, this resource is something that we should always look to do. This was a closet, as you can see to the left, that was, or a room that I call it a closet because it had become a storage area. And now it's been turned into a very vibrant community tech lab where people can come in and they can learn about technology, but more importantly, advanced technology, wireless skill building, and how to do communications, how to learn how maybe the open data portal works so that they can research and find information, because open data portals are almost in every city, how you can find information that will help you in your activism and whatever it is that you're going for and towards. You can go to the next slide. When I say that,
sorry, it's from Monique. We're almost out of time.
Okay, no worries. It's the last slide. And it's talking about our expansion of how we have been able to spread the portable network kit.
Oh, I hopefully she'll be right back. We'll hold it for her. But I can attest to the wonderful work that that both Monique has done in the various communities that she's worked with recently, as well as CTNY more broadly and the portable network kit. We actually did an episode in which we talked extensively with them, her and Raul Enriquez, about the process that they use in terms of teaching, because it is something where they want to make sure if they are distributing these kits, people will know how to use them in the emergency or in a non-emergency situation. So there's an extensive training that goes along with it. That was in episode 614 of the Community Broadband Bits podcast, in which we talked with them about what the kits are and their approach to them. I haven't seen her come back on stage in the back, so I'm afraid that we have this issue with other folks. And one of the things that I guess I would draw from a lesson from this is, even where people seem to have good internet access, it could get better. Like we have a long ways to go, even among those of us that have a decent connection, to make sure it actually meets our needs. So Pamela, I think we should move along.
Yes, yes. That wraps up our lightning round segment. Big thank you to Davida, Jordan, and Monique for emphasizing the impact we can make through collaboration and leveraging the expertise that already exists within our communities. Next up, we have our next trivia question, so I'll pass it over to Chris.
Uh-oh. Okay. So here we go. This is they gave me the hardest one, which is the Baltimore Digital Equity Coalition was formed in 2020. We just told you that most of the digital equity coalitions in that survey that was previously done were formed in 2020. So was this one formed in 2020 or was it not? True or false? And while you're pondering it and starting to put answers in the chat, and we'll see which way that the theme goes in terms of people's responses, I do want to note that there is a new survey. So if you just tuned in live, you should go back a little bit. And Pamela was prompting people, make sure you get those surveys into NDIA about your coalition so we know as much as possible about this important time as we are doing this work. In the chat, I am seeing things that are not related. Oh, there we go. Now it's starting to come through. We're a little bit ahead. So Pamela and I live in the future on this show, and then you all get to hear what we're saying, and then we have to wait for you to catch up to us. So we've got a bunch of falses. People think it was not formed in 2020. I don't know if they were using a search engine or not, but I think our next guest will be able to tell us when they were formed. Oh, it's me still. That's why Pamela's just like, why do you stop talking? This is what I bring to the show. Pamela brings like professionalism, and I bring you never know what's going to come next. The Baltimore Digital Equity Coalition was formed in 2020. I'm giving that away. It was true. I thought Sam might answer it. It was initially created as a rapid response to there's just so many people in Baltimore that did not have internet access. A lot more kids in Baltimore did not have internet access than most communities. And so they rapidly responded. The coalition is now 100 members strong. And we have their interim director, who is someone that I think a lot of you are familiar with, Sam Musgrave, sorry. Had a great volleyball coach I worked with that was named Hera Graves, and I just keep spinning over there. Sam, welcome, and I'm excited to see your presentation.
Thanks so much. Happy Digital Inclusion Week, and thank you for having me. As Chris mentioned, the Baltimore Digital Equity Coalition is comprised of more than 100 member organizations committed to closing the digital divide by promoting equitable access to technology, ubiquitous internet connectivity, and the development of digital skills for all. Through advocacy, education, and partnership building, BDEC seeks to empower communities with the resources needed for full participation in digital society. Today, I'm here to share a lot of information about a longtime BDEC member organization, Project Waves, whose work serves as an example of how community networks can grow and scale to serve those who are most impacted by the digital red line. So I want to posit this. I want to kind of give a little bit of context to this, that I think there are a lot of correlations made between the 1936 Rural Electrification Act and 2023's Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And access to high-speed broadband is no longer a luxury, but a critical resource that we are seeing massive historical investments in. So Project Waves is a nonprofit internet service provider here in Baltimore City, where 40% of Baltimore households are disconnected from home broadband service, wireline home broadband service. Project Waves is presently serving about 2,000 individuals. The way that they provide their connectivity allows them to deliver 1 gigabit symmetrical speeds to each user. And a 5G service model is launching this year. They are ongoing. They're actively piloting a 5G model to ensure that their distribution covers the geography of Baltimore that it needs to cover. Project Waves takes a social work approach to connectivity, meeting our customers where they are and serving community members' needs first and foremost. Project Waves has been through a significant amount of growth that kind of mirrors a lot of the coalition building we've seen today, presented to us here today. Primarily first in phase 1 as a rapid response to COVID-19. Project Waves established a point-to-multipoint wireless network to provision emergency internet connectivity to 300 households comprised of students in the Baltimore City public school system. After innovating and developing a bit with that point-to-multipoint network, Project Waves began deploying a fiber to the premise solution focused on covering service to multi-dwelling unit or multi-tenant environment properties or apartment complexes. Through the development of some research in partnership with another coalition member at the Baltimore Neighborhood Indicators Alliance, we learned that of the 40% of Baltimore currently lacking a home broadband connection, about 20% of those households are actually located within apartment buildings. And so beginning the deployment of fiber to the premise was a really effective way for us to rapidly respond to the digital divide and gaps in internet access in Baltimore City. After initially kind of piloting that through a public Wi-Fi model in our first apartment building deployment, we expanded on those efforts using a G.hn network solution, which allowed us to provide fiber to the door type speeds to residents in those communities, supported through philanthropic funding, and then eventually got to the point of scale through the allocation of federal dollars and state dollars that were allocated to the project through ARPA funding. And so it's important to note that this growth has been significant in its trajectory in terms of really starting with that philanthropic investment and growing it into partnerships with state and local governments to expand the network throughout Baltimore City. A lot of folks ask, how does this network work? Well, Project Waves is radically simple in its connectivity approach. Again, through leveraging a G.hn device released by Positron Access Solutions, we are able to essentially deliver fiber to the property, hand off that fiber to our own network switch, which communicates directly with our gigabit access multiplexer device from Positron. That device rides the existing coaxial cabling within an MDU property or in an apartment building, and then provides direct to-the-door connectivity to customers through their coaxial cable jacks. Each customer for Project Waves receives a home router, a private SSID and password, and is connected to the network at no cost to them. Digital navigation is an incredibly important component of the work of Project Waves. In addition to providing basic connectivity to its users, the Project Waves customer service and support team really is committed to ensuring that folks are using the internet in the ways that they find meaningful to them. Through applying for benefits programs on digital platforms, orienting to basic internet use, setting up email accounts, access to devices. Project Waves has partnered with the city of Baltimore to deploy more than 1,000 Chromebooks this year, and is certainly committed to ensuring that digital access is paired with the tools needed to ensure that internet adoption is complete and meaningful to its users. One of the things that we really like to talk about when we talk about Project Waves is the increase in how people are using the internet. And we can see a variety of ways that users on the Project Waves network are increasing their ability to remain socially connected, to communicate using digital tools. Telehealth services have become a huge and primary component of serving Project Waves customers, orienting folks to the use of telehealth platforms, how to access electronic health records, et cetera. Online banking, and then of course, online education and employment opportunities. I also like to really plug the Project Waves team here because I'm sure everyone is used to kind of having a fraught relationship with our internet service providers. Project Waves' team has achieved some really incredible metrics when it comes to satisfaction from customers who are using the network, both in terms of quality of service, but also in terms of quality of interaction with the team. I will kind of jump into, I know we're close on time here. Project Waves is looking to expand its service across the state of Maryland this year, and in preparation with BEAD funds that will come down in 2025. The expansion to counties outside of Baltimore City is a primary goal. The next is to continue collaborating with partners in this space to expand its impact, really working directly with property owners and landlords who are interested in providing more affordable and high quality services to their residents in affordable housing communities. And then ensuring that the impact goes far beyond just the connectivity, but ensuring that folks are connected to all of the skills and resources that they need to receive online in order to thrive. What can you all do to help? advocate, ensure that multi-tenant environment owners are aware of the new FCC guidance on providing service in apartment communities. Those rules were updated in 2022, and they are much stronger in terms of preventing, monopolies from existing in apartment spaces, and ensuring that further options and market competition are available to residents of affordable housing communities. Start planning for broadband expansion efforts now. Funds are time limited. We are already at the end of that ARPA clock, and are quickly approaching kind of the shot clock for BEAD dollars rolling down. So if you're interested in connecting with Project Waves, I've listed some of the contact information for those folks here. Chrissy Bowman, or Chrissy Powell, is the director at Project Waves now. And you can always connect with me at the Baltimore Digital Equity Coalition using this information.
That was wonderful, Sam. And I should have noted that your title, in addition to being the interim director at the Baltimore Digital Equity Coalition, is the Director of Development and Strategic Partnerships with Project Waves. I think you're, and you also have a role within the Digital Harbor Foundation as well.
I do. I wear a lot of hats, Chris. So
yes,
I appreciate that plug. Yes, for the moment, I am fully focused on the Baltimore Digital Equity Coalition and uplifting the work of our members here in the coalition. So glad to be here today.
Well, one of the things that I wanted to ask you about is, in working with partnership, you have to build trust. And I'm curious, if we go back to that phase one in which you talked about the point to multi-point wireless, I feel like, and I don't want to pick on you because that was a hard time, with the technology and the results. But the important thing that I think I want people to take away from this is, when you try to do something that's important, you don't have one shot, right? You could make some mistakes and you get to keep going. And so, don't let a fear of not doing 100% success slow you down. So just talk to that for a minute.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you brought this up, because you are right? In the spring of 2020, when we were literally knocking on doors during a global health pandemic, standing 6 feet away from one another, trying to get folks to trust us to provide them free internet service that, frankly, wasn't the fastest, wasn't the most useful, could be a little bit unreliable in terms of speed and quality. It was certainly an uphill climb for us, but you're so right. I think our learning from that time was that rapid responses are often kind of the internet of last resort. And as we grew the network, as Project Waves grew its network, there was a significant commitment to ensuring that the digital divide was not exacerbated through the provision of slower or lesser quality service to residents who were struggling with socioeconomic challenges or geographic challenges. And hence, that was a real opportunity for us to explore the ways that we could reach the highest number of individuals who were living behind the digital red line. And we really landed on those who are living in affordable housing communities here in Baltimore City. And being able to provide them with that 1 gigabit symmetrical service at no cost to users has really been the result of those learnings in early days, and our ability to build trust within the community. And I think is one of the most exciting parts about this 5G pilot that will be expanding throughout 2025, is that we did learn a lot from that moment, and have learned about the value of partnership building in terms of customer referral. In particular, partnership with city schools in 2020 was one of the most meaningful partnerships that we have developed, and continues through our community schools coordinators, who frankly are in close contact with many of the households struggling behind the digital red line, and go a long way in building the trust in our community through those individuals who are most closely connected.
But then the quick follow-up is, how did you also build trust with the people that were putting money into it when the wireless network didn't really hit the high standard that you had for it? Just a quick version of that. How did you message with them?
Yeah, I mean, it was the fact that we were always learning, right? We knew that although the network wasn't performing in a way that we could feel particularly engaged by, I think, and frankly, we weren't interested in further expanding or exacerbating, fluctuating service quality issues for residents of Baltimore. the folks that were invested early in our work understood that our network was a pilot, and they were really encouraged that we were continuing to explore alternative technology solutions and hadn't asked them to continue investing in something that we knew wasn't working. We were able to quickly pivot from our wireless model into a wired solution because we were R&Ding that solution throughout the period of time that we were growing and scaling the wireless network. And it was because of that we were able to quickly pivot into the direction of fiber provision, fiber to the premise provision, and maintain relationships with early investors and early funders who were so instrumental in expanding the network and expanding the number of households we were capable of serving.
Awesome. And thank you so much, Sam, for your presentation. I've got one final question for you. If there are organizations or cities that want to replicate the Project Waves model, what are some key considerations they should make?
Great question. So the first and foremost is to have really, really meaningful relationships early with your fiber providers. Project Waves works with a number of fiber providers. It takes a generally pretty agnostic position on which backhaul providers are available to light its network. But really developing and investing early on in those relationships with backhaul providers who may be capable of seeding the beginning of a network in your community is important. And then the second one I would say is have a really great relationship with your local office of broadband, whether that's a city office of broadband or in digital equity, maybe an office of information technology. If there's a municipal broadband network or open access network that is available to leverage in your community, ensure you know who you're talking to and make friends with the folks in your permitting office, because your permitting will keep you up at night. And those would be my recommendations. Definitely connecting early and often with potential backhaul providers, and having positive and effective working relationships with the offices of broadband and digital equity in your locale, and really exploring and understanding the permitting process for the construction of fiber optic networks.
Thank you, Sam. Wonderful and great work out there. We're really glad you're out there doing it.
Thanks so much for having me, and happy Digital Inclusion Week.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you. There are a lot of great groups in Baltimore that are doing really great work. We particularly at the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, we're very taken with Project Waves in particular because of that focus on the apartment buildings. And one of the things that we are working with places on, I think, is understanding that when it comes to low-income households, many of them, majority of them, live in multi-tenant environments or apartment buildings of some sort. So it's a huge focus for us, and we just think that the work that they're doing there is so important. I also want to say that in case you're annoyed by my flickering a video, I am more annoyed by you. It is not a connection issue. My connection is rock solid. It is my computer, which is trying to drive me nuts. We have a final trivia question. And so here we go. In July of this year, the city of Oakland was awarded $15 million by the California Public Utilities Commission to expand broadband access. The question is, how many households approximately in West Oakland, downtown, Fruitvale, and East Oakland will be connected through that project? This is so exciting, Pamela. You heard before the call. I love what the state of California is doing on this stuff. It's really wonderful.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to hear more from that with our keynote speaker. And I definitely want to see what people think the answers are in the chat. If you want to share if you think it's A, B, C, or D, and then we'll reveal the answers.
Yeah, and I'll say before I give it out here, we're coming very close to it. We've got some D's in the chat. I don't know what else we'll see here, but the California Alliance for Digital Equity and the folks from the Digital Equity Los Angeles Coalition have done a wonderful job of making sure that California's state government was prioritizing this, and then making sure that the investments it was making were going to places that had the trust of the people. So those coalitions have truly done a wonderful job. We're going to hear more about that very briefly here, but I'm excited to say that the biggest number is the winner. The answer is 2,544 households, as well as 14 community anchor institutions and public safety. That is tremendous, and it is a foundation that I have no doubt will be built upon. So congratulations to Oakland. Wonderful work.
Awesome. So throughout today's show, we explore the power of coalition building and the positive impact of community-led solutions. Our keynote speaker is here to tie everything together. I'm so excited to introduce our keynote speaker, Georgia Savage. Georgia is the Deputy Director of Oakland Undivided, an equity-based collective impact initiative launched in May 2020, again, to harness the people's power to solve the digital divide. From finding the right partners to breaking down barriers, Georgia is here and will share how Oakland Undivided continues to thrive as a coalition. So please join me in welcoming to the virtual stage our keynote speaker, Georgia.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. Wonderful. So for Coalition Building for Success, as you know, my name is Georgia Savage, she, her. I'm the Deputy Director of Oakland Undivided. So Oakland Undivided is a collective impact initiative. We started in 2020 in order to ensure that all of our students had the devices and the connectivity they needed to engage in online learning. And since then, we have expanded, as you can see, from our leadership partners, our community leaders, and our elected leaders in order to ensure that we're tackling the root causes of the digital divide and actually approaching this issue at a systemic level. And so today, when I was asked to give this keynote, thank you again, about coalition building for success, I wanted to offer some strategies that Oakland Undivided has used and has been successful for us. And these strategies are applicable to not only urban areas like Oakland, but throughout the country. And so first, obviously, starting with something that's critical for coalitions is partnerships. I love these pictures. This was taken from an event we had just last week with all of our partners present. And so the first big idea for partnerships that I want to share is that community anchor institutions are critical coalition partners. They're really critical, and these are organizations like your housing authority, your libraries, your schools, because they're trusted and hyper-local. They create impact at scale, and there are certain resources that are only available to anchor orgs, such as grants. And so when we first founded Oakland Undivided, we, of course, had a partnership with the City of Oakland and Oakland Unified School District, which are critical anchor orgs in order to ensure that students were connected. But we also wanted to include key digital equity organizations in Oakland. So if you do have established digital equity orgs, it's really mindful to not create something new when something great already exists. And so Tech Exchange for us, which has been doing the work in Oakland since 1995, is just a critical organization that we knew needed to be part of our founding partners as well. And so moving us to the next point, big idea number 2, I really encourage you to obviously look at your CAIs and digital equity organizations, but also even organizations that don't center digital equity often do recognize its importance. And so when you're thinking of how to expand your coalition, think of organizations like anti-poverty organizations, right? Youth-centered organizations, racial equity organizations that also may really care about this issue. And really with an expansion of a coalition, that really helps when you're having folks sign on to your advocacy letters, when you want to organize and have a lot of folks show up, for example, for a really critical decision-making meeting for your broadband office. And I will say also, it's really important to have multiple perspectives from multiple industries in order to make sure that your messaging is accurate and make sure you're having a holistic perspective as well. The second thing I want to talk about, which is incredibly critical, CAIs and coalition partners are incredibly critical part of this work, is identifying community needs. So for the need in your community, the first big idea is that something I want to address is that industry benefits from the overcomplication of this issue. I just saw in the Benton Roundup Institute, someone had analyzed all of the state digital equity plans, and cost is the #1 barrier to getting connected, which I don't think is surprising to anyone who's been doing this work. And we know that that's inextricably linked to the monopolization of this industry. And also there's a real asymmetry of data available, right? With a lot of ISPs being the holder of a lot of this data and unable or unwilling to provide it to community members. And we saw the results of that, right? In that there's a lot of inaccurate mapping at a federal, at a state level because of this asymmetry of data. So that leads me to my next point, that it's incredibly important that communities are collecting their own data. And I want to caution against analysis paralysis because obviously that can be a very overwhelming task. But I really encourage folks to utilize their anchor institutions. Are anchor institutions doing a survey, for example, that's annual? And can they integrate a digital equity question into their existing survey or structures? And some examples I would offer for what we've done at Oakland Undivided is both qualitative and quantitative. So from a qualitative point of view, we have worked with Oakland Housing Authority, which has been a critical CAI partner for us, where we had them send out a survey to folks asking about the quality of their home internet, how often they experience interruptions, do they have other provider options? And we also partnered with other coalition partners to actually go to their events and ask them about what they think the broadband barriers are in our community, and then what they think the solutions should be as well. From a quantitative point of view, which you'll see represented here on the screen, we partner with Oakland Unified School District in order to have a tech check survey integrated into back to school registration forms. Essentially, this is just asking families, do they own a device at home? Do they have internet? And we were able to create that top map that you see there, that heat map. We also were able to partner with Oakland Housing Authority again and CWA to actually go into Housing Authority closets and see what cables are available there. We also worked with the Housing Authority to go into folks' houses and actually run speed tests and compare that to what they're paying for. Are they getting the speeds that they're paying for? And lastly, with all this information, we knew that we really wanted to find a way to collect data at scale. And so what we did is we partnered with Oakland Unified as well as Hubble IQ, and we employed a proprietary technology that catalogs internet connection speeds through an internet-based web browser extension integrated into the district loan computers. And so just in a 2-month period, we were able to collect all this data, which is 500,000 individual speed tests at 18,000 unique locations. And that created this map you see, which says Citywide Internet Performance Study. And the results were that connections in our highest income zip code with the largest population of white residents were nearly 10 times faster than in our poorest with the city's largest population of people of color. And the reason why I say it's so critical for communities to collect their own data is because it's really critical to counter the ISP information that everyone in Oakland was connected. It's really important because you can see from this news article that when we were applying for grants at a state level, the last mile grant that the question just asked about, our $15 million grant, Comcast and AT&T actually objected to our application, saying this would be an overbuild. And we were able to prove that no, there is a high level of need in Oakland because we had collected all of this community data. That moves me to my next point, ensuring that those impacted are leading the work, which is removing the barriers to participation. And so in order to remove the barriers to participation, I first want to just challenge the assumption that folks need to be empowered in our community versus structural barriers need to be removed, right? Our community is already empowered. We just need to remove structural barriers to make sure they can participate. So one way in which we do that is our phenomenal Director of Community Impact, Cynthia Diaz, leads community engagement meetings every month, which shares critical information with folks and allows them to know where these meetings are being held, what's being discussed, who are our advocacy targets, what are our advocacy targets, and then also removing barriers to participating in this work, such as providing folks with transportation, for providing folks with childcare, and actually compensating community for their time and wisdom, right? It takes time, effort, and money to attend these meetings, to fill out surveys. It's critical that we are actually paying them for their time and knowledge. And then lastly, going to the community, right? A lot of the qualitative information we were able to collect, we actually went to partners' events and we were able to meet the community where they're at, which I think is also a really critical part of getting the information that you need. And lastly, supporting with funding to maintain and expand these programs. And so as I referenced, right, we had our $15 million federal funding account for last mile. That's going to be really critical to connecting folks. We also applied with all the organizations that you see listed on the screen for the NTIA competitive grant. and the capacity grants as well. So definitely encourage you in this time where there's a generational moment of broadband funding. It's really important that we are leveraging that and we are supporting our community with applying to those dollars. Lastly, I want to talk about sustainability. You'll see here the infrastructure. That's our wonderful City of Oakland broadband manager. And then this, Chris also referenced, is the California Alliance for Digital Equity, or CADE, which is our statewide coalition. And so first, I do want to address, it's, as has been mentioned in this presentation, right? Many of these organizations started in 2020. And now as we are kind of moving away in a lot of senses from digital equity being on the public's mind in our collective consciousness, it's really critical that we're maintaining the existing works and coalition from the pandemic. And so our approach has been definitely trying to continue year after year integrating the back to school survey and OUSD and maintaining positions in our school district as well. From a long-term sustainability perspective, as I mentioned before, this is a generational moment of funding. So definitely trying to get those dollars for your community and institutionalize the work by finding a sustainable position within these CAIs will be so critical. From a post-funding perspective, definitely infrastructure, right? We're talking about our last mile grant, middle mile. I also want to shout out Oakland Housing Authority that is partnering with the city, but they have contributed $2.5 million to connect their largest housing authority properties. That's our amazing executive director, Patricia Wells. So ensuring that the infrastructure is there in order to actually connect folks is so critical, especially future-proof infrastructure. The second thing I wanted to address is legislation. So that's what you see to the right here, and that's why you see CADE, or California Alliance for Digital Equity's logo. They've been really critical in moving us as a statewide coalition to ensure that we are getting legislation passed, not only in our cities, but from a state perspective. So I encourage folks to look at our Internet Choice Ordinance, and we're going to try again next year with the state digital discrimination bill. And then lastly, I would just encourage folks are doing great data collection. Make sure that that is accessible to everyone in the community by putting that on your website or even sharing it with the city and seeing if your city can have it in their broadband master plan or on their website somewhere. Great. Thank you all so much. Feel free to send me an email if you have questions.
Thank you, Georgia. I wanted to just say how fantastic it is to see you collecting that data. One of the things that just drives me a little bit batty is the way the federal government and states have totally abdicated the collection of accurate data and making it public, which is something I think government is essential for government to do for society to work well. So thank you for that. There's a question in the chat that says, can we just ignore the ISP information? And I'm not sure who the we is or what the ISP information always is, but I wasn't sure if that cues anything you wanted to make as an additional comment.
I think it really depends on what the ISP information says for your community. I think for our case, for Oakland, we had heard that there was 100% connection and that, as I mentioned, building in our community would be an overbuild. And we could clearly see in our data that the average some folks were getting was 12 megs, right? Based on 500,000 speed tests, was 14 megs. And there isn't a plan in Oakland. The lowest plan offered in Oakland is 100 megs. And then if you need to qualify for that service, the lowest plan offered is 50 megs, right? And so there's not even a plan that low. So I think that's very different for us. I guess, I don't know if I would say ignore would be the word, but to an extent, I think in other communities, it's probably different. I don't want to speak to, rural or tribal, but I think it definitely depends on what the information is saying.
Yeah. Now, before Pamela goes, if Jordan, if you wouldn't mind popping Georgia's contact information back up for a couple seconds. Go ahead, Pamela.
Thank you so much, Georgia. And we got a question in the chat that I think would be great for you to answer. It's in relation to how to keep the momentum and participation in a coalition going strong. People might be stuck in that feeling that, at the beginning of the coalition is exciting, but then after that, it doesn't really, participation starts dropping off. From our point of view, NDIA noticed that giving coalition members actionable tasks during meetings helps maintain momentum, and also creating working groups, as well as having opportunities for participation can help feel, coalition members can feel ownership. But what are ways that Oakland Undivided kind of continues that momentum and make sure that folks continue coming to those meetings and having ways to participate?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd say a few things. Definitely establishing some sort of regular meeting cadence, I think, is great. But I also think just taking time when you meet to celebrate wins, right? Even if they're small wins, I think that can go such a long way. And I also, the other thing that I wanted to say is, if possible, meeting in person. I think that those in-person events or in-person meetings can be so energizing, and you're actually getting to know folks. And especially if you're meeting in the community, meeting with community members can be so energizing. So those would be my 2 takeaways.
Terrific. There's a lot of other questions that I would love to ask you, but I'll have to do it over email, just like everybody else. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you all.
The collection of local data, I can't stress enough. No one else is going to collect it unless you step up as a community to do it. Working with the school districts is such a great way to go about that, and so just wonderful on that. Any last comments on that presentation, Pamela?
Yeah, I think it's great what Oakland Undivided is doing, especially in regards to making sure that, your partners, when you're seeking them out, you're getting multiple diverse perspectives in the table, just to make sure that, you're addressing all the unique digital inclusion needs in your community that way. I just love how much trust they have in their community. You can really see that. And overall, I just love the themes of making sure that you're intentional with the partners that you choose, and making sure that you build those relationships at the very beginning so that it doesn't come off ingenuine when you do need to make an ask.
We wanted to address a couple of questions before we head out. And one that came up earlier in the chat was asking about how to set up a coalition in Virginia. But we're going to answer that for everyone, not just in the state that is for lovers. So the answer that I believe Paolo suggested was to start with identifying a small group of stakeholders that would have an interest would have the organizational capacity to speak for and to support coalition work, to be thinking about a lead organization that would kind of carry the main load and others would support, but someone that would be a lead on it. And then there's a couple of links. There's a guidebook from NDIA and then a link to a Pennsylvania State Coalition as a model. Pamela, anything you'd add to that?
Nope, that's perfect. I just want to give a shout out to Paolo, our senior programs manager. He does a lot of work with coalition, so you're really getting the expertise from him right there.
All right, and then I'm going to read this question, and you can do the answer. I think one here what we're going to do is, how would you ensure that that the coalition would be inclusive of small and emerging nonprofits that do not have a history of managing direct funds?
Yeah, so our recommendation is to leverage your local network and make sure to be strategic about engaging with partners and organizations, like our speakers have said throughout the show, and make sure that that the partners that you reach out to represent specific groups that are most affected by the digital divide, and make sure to spotlight their work at coalition meetings to make sure that they feel included and recognized, and make sure to give them that opportunity to share what they're doing.
I think that's really important, that last bit in particular, because I think it's important to recognize that a lot of people might be nervous, people that have a lot to share, people who might be a wonderful public speaker in the future, but you don't know until you give them a chance to get their reps in, right? To give a chance to talk about what they're doing, maybe makes them more enthusiastic to do more of that kind of work when they are recognized for it. So I think it's really important, especially in a coalition that may start off with a lot of people who are doing it as their 45th through 50th hours of the week for whatever they're passionate about or whatever they're working on, is that recognition and a chance to speak for themselves about it. So I think that's pretty important.
Yeah, absolutely. And, digital inclusion coalition spaces are oftentimes a yes and a positive, so make sure that you allow people to share what they're doing, because then coalition members will definitely want to find a way to uplift and support and partner with that. So, yeah, great answer, Paulo. We are your voice in that.
All right. So as we're getting ready to wrap up, I just wanted to reflect for a second on the show. During the show, I was just thinking a little bit about it, and that this work, this coalition work, it is a continuation. This is something that I should say that has really come from people on my team. Sean, among others in particular, have continued to talk about how we're not talking about internet access. We are talking about civil rights for everyone, and continuing that effort. When I look back, obviously, when you think civil rights, some may think first to efforts in the 50s and the 60s to desegregate and remove Jim Crow and work toward a more egalitarian society, or perhaps to making sure that all people could marry those that they love and have the full benefits of law and things like that. You might go back further to a population that is one of the ones that is prime for digital navigation, older adults. And the work that they did in the 20s and 30s for civil rights to make sure that as they retired or left the workforce, they would not be penniless. So this is about having access to full society. It's about the being a regular member of society, but being right doesn't make it necessarily like inevitable. And so the thing that I was thinking about with this coalition work is how it has to be strategic. It's not necessarily fair. When I read about the work that is done in during the 50s and 60s, organizing for civil rights in the South and elsewhere, particularly among Black people. What I think is just how they had to, go up against unfair odds, and that's not to equate what I'm about to say with it, but the simple fact is that if you're at Oakland Undivided, or if you're in another one of these organizations that is working for civil rights along these lines, it is not fair that you have to try to be nice to the big cable and telephone companies while they get to attack you and undermine you. We've seen this all across the country. And nonetheless, that's been something that I've wrestled with over the years, is how to deal with that, and feeling that my enemy is not actually Comcast, but Comcast perceives me to be their enemy. And so coalitions have to deal with that. And I think that it's important to generally recognize there is a future for those cable and telephone companies in all these debates, even as they would like to kick us out of them. And so we have to be strategic about that. It doesn't mean that it's fair. It can be frustrating. And one of the things that you can do internally is to find the people you can vent with over that. So it's a mishmash. It is not well organized, but it's a series of thoughts I was having as we listen to the speakers today.
Thank you, Chris. And what mainly stood out for me is how much the solution relies in our community, and it's there. And I love how our speakers know that, and they do digital inclusion work, and it's community building, it's community power, because they know that, it's only within our communities that we can solve this digital divide.
Yes. So it's hard work, and it is liberating, but it is hard, stressful work. I did want to say before you start reading us out, Pamela, Monique did pop back in about 10 minutes later. She got kicked out, but that is resolved. She's fine. So what's wonderful, we're sorry that we lost the last couple of seconds of her presentation.
Yes. Sorry about that, Monique, but thank you again for your presentation. And this wraps up our event. We have the another Building for Digital Equity show wrapped up in the books. I want to thank all of you for joining us. And I'm really excited to see all of the Digital Inclusion Week events that you'll be participating in. Make sure to register your event. And if you're a part of a coalition, make sure to fill out that coalition survey by November 15.
And I would like to thank Utopia Fiber for making this possible, as well as the wonderful folks from the National Digital Inclusion Alliance that we work with on this, the folks that I get to work with on a daily basis, the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. It's a pleasure. We'd love to have your thoughts on what we should do again in a few months when we come back together again for our final event. We'll review the year, but feel free to reach out to Jordan especially with any thoughts. And we have a survey. Please do take that. We will email that out to people who registered. But we very much appreciate the survey. It's a very brief survey for what this show was, but then also separately make sure you're in contact with NDIA about their survey, which I dare say is more important, but will also take more time to do. So thank you for your efforts in making your communities a stronger place and the United States a much stronger country. Oh, I guess actually we might have some Canadians or even people from other nations as well. So thank you for making the world a better place. Really, I'm just going to up the ante a little bit. So Pamela, you did a wonderful job as always. It is wonderful to co-host with you. Thank you for all the effort you put into this.
Thank you, and you too, Chris. It's always a blast.
Well, it's certainly unpredictable. So thank you all. We'll cut it off there.